Fans, we are live on thehannibaltv.com with another edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. My name is Jack Kilby, Executive Vice President of Great North Wrestling, and I'm pleased to have on a very special guest tonight, a man who really made his mark in the professional wrestling business. He's a former AWA World Tag Team Champion, a WWE superstar, one half of the very memorable Orient Express tag team, Max Moon, and so many other incarnations that we'll talk about. I'm talking about Mr. Paul Diamond, Tom Borick. Tom, how are you today, sir?
I'm doing great. Great to be here and, have a chance to talk to some wrestling fans. It's been a little bit.
Yes, most definitely. And very much appreciate your time. I wanted to start off the interview, though, with a question that helps give the fans some context to your career. You were a professional soccer player and got into the business thereafter. But I wanted to ask you, before you looked at getting into the wrestling business as a profession, were you a fan growing up, or what was your level of knowledge of professional wrestling?
I was actually. Well, I'll back up a little bit. So I was born in Yugoslavia. Of course, Yugoslavia doesn't exist anymore. I am Croatian. So Croatia now is its own country. But, that's what I was born. I grew up there till I was 13. In 1974, we moved to Canada, Winnipeg, actually. I had a cousin there that had already been in Winnipeg for a few years. And so I started, soccer is worldwide, and, it's growing even more so now in the United States. But, back then it was just anything and everything that we did when I was growing up was, you get a ball, we'd be playing soccer. So my father had played, and that was a goal of mine to try and accomplish that. So once I moved to Canada, I started playing youth soccer. I was fortunate to hook up with a really good guy, a coach from Scotland, George Watson, who was responsible for a lot of different things in my career. When I finished high school, I got a soccer scholarship at Old Dominion University in Norfolk, Virginia, and stayed there for 2 seasons, my freshman and sophomore years. And after the sophomore season, back then there was the North American Soccer League. Now it's the Major League Soccer. Back then, like I said, so NASL, and they had a draft just like the NFL has a draft, like NBA has a draft. So in 1981, I was actually the 6th pick overall in the first round of that draft, picked by a new team that year, Calgary Boomers. So, that was my first year, and I managed to make the team, stayed there for 1 year. However, the teams weren't very stable. The gentleman that owned the Calgary Boomers, I don't know if you remember, in Nelson, Albania, he was a guy, I think he was involved in some oil business and all that kind of stuff. But Calgary only lasted 1 year, and the team folded. Of course, I still wanted to, continue playing. They had the league has a dispersal draft, so other teams would have a chance to pick the players that were on the Calgary team. And I was very fortunate. I got selected by the Tampa Bay Rowdies from that dispersal draft. So 1982 was my first season in Tampa. And, I stayed there 82, 83, 84. Excuse me. And after 1984 season, unfortunately, the whole league went under. The league folded. And, I didn't want a real job. and your question was, did I know wrestling? Yeah. So when I was growing up in Winnipeg, the only thing that aired there was the AWA. So I started watching. Actually went to the Winnipeg Arena a couple of times to see the matches and stuff. So that's kind of what I knew of wrestling. Once the soccer league folded, like I said, and I'm really honestly, I didn't want a real job. I wanted to stay in some sort of a sport, athletics, professionally as long as I could. And a gentleman that was our equipment manager for the Tampa Bay Rowdies, he had managed to, he became friends with Barry Windham, and he was selling his pictures and all this stuff. And at that time in Tampa, every Tuesday night at the they had wrestling matches. So the guy would get me tickets. I'd go every Tuesday, and I went for a while while the season was going on, and kind of watching it. I thought, wow, I mean, I'm a pretty good athlete. I think I could do this, And back then, it wasn't nearly as easy to get into the business as it may be now. However, I was very fortunate at the time. After the league folded, I had a job at Gold's Gym, and I happened to run into Joe Malenko, the son of Boris Malenko, who was a big star in Florida Championship Wrestling and a heck of a great guy. And he told me his dad had a wrestling school, so that's where my wrestling career started. I was trained by Boris Malenko and both of the Malenko boys. And I mean, I am very, very fortunate and very glad that that's who trained me, because really they did an awesome job. Starting in the business, I knew a lot more than a lot of other people.
Mm-hmm. What we've heard a lot about how the training process was back in the day there, the golden era of pro wrestling, if you will, as compared to a lot of the the cookie cutter stuff that we see in some of the larger organizations. If you had to characterize your training process there in terms of the physicality, how did that work? Did they smarten you up right away, or did you have to earn your stripes, so to speak?
No, not really. Boris Malenko, he, like I said, he worked with Eddie Graham, Florida Championship Wrestling, for many years, and they had a great feud for many years there in Florida. But he wanted to start his own company, and he tried to do that. He got a TV show running in Tampa, and the other wrestling organizations at the time didn't look kindly on that. So he was kind of like blackballed, sort of. And in fact, when I first met his son, and he told me that his father had a wrestling school, whoever I mentioned that name to, they would say, "Oh man, you don't want him to train you. You'll never get into business. He's blackballed and this and that." So as far as having to earn my stripes, no. And yeah, he smartened everybody up right away. He kind of wanted to be able to keep that wrestling school going. And if, I think most of the people that, if you try to, really get physical with them, probably wouldn't last for very long. And so he just wanted to make sure that he taught us as much as he knew, but without really, obviously, you have to be in shape to be in the business anyway. So, we worked on that, but not anybody that, you're getting beat up or stretched or anything like that. So, yeah, I was, very fortunate. Like I said, both working with the two boys and him, I learned so much that I was way ahead of the game once I first started.
I also read that later on down the road, when you're breaking in, or perhaps that time frame's a little bit off, you were also trained or had some developmental contact with gentleman Chris Adams.
Oh, I don't know. I'm not sure where that came from. Never happened.
Never, right?
I think I may have actually, my whole career, I may have worked with Chris Adams, just worked a match like twice. But where that would have come from, not really sure, but it's just one of those things. No, that's not true.
Yeah, there's definitely a lot of misinformation in these sources. I noticed in '85, according to your match listing, that you worked a couple of Jim Crockett promotion NWA, or maybe a single JCP taping for the NWA in '85, where you took on Tully Blanchard and Billy Graham
Mm-hmm.
at the WTBS studios. How did that particular booking come about?
Okay, so actually, my first job, full-time job in wrestling, was in Atlanta with the NWA. But at the time, it was still run by Ole Anderson. And so I think my first match, I believe, was like Valentine's Day of '85. And, I was working there for a few months. The way that company was run at the time, we ran some shows in Georgia, and then every other week we would go up to like the Midwest and run some shows in like Michigan and Indiana and Ohio and stuff like that. And so had a week off. I went home back to Tampa for a bit. And when I went back to Atlanta, to the studio for the TV taping, man, I show up and Crockett's there. Had no idea what was going on, but Dusty's there, all those guys are there, Billy Graham, the Barbet, I mean, everybody. So, at that point, I'm like, man, I don't know what's going on. So, so they needed bodies, obviously, to put people over. So, yeah, I worked with those guys on Atlanta TV. They kept me around for maybe another month or so. But they had so many guys that there was no way that they're going to keep me just being as green as I was. So yeah, that's how that came about.
Did you have any? We recently lost, or this year lost Ole Anderson. A polarizing figure in the business, but generally credited for having one hell of a mind. Did you have any early interactions with Ole that jump out, or
no, not too much. I mean, I really wasn't I worked opening matches and stuff, so I'm glad that I got booked, but no, not really involved in any, like, again, I wasn't involved in any of the programs or anything that they were running, so I was just glad to have a job and work on a nightly basis.
Absolutely. One of the early standout, at least according to again the research of your career, was when you were involved with Texas All Star, and formed that's when you were first in that tag team, and there's a couple of names attached to it, but first with Nick Kanitsky and then Shawn Michaels. How did you get tapped for that tag team role at the start?
Right. So when I was done in Atlanta, okay, so the first job that I got with Ole was through, I don't know if you're familiar with a guy by the name of Ron Slinker. Yeah. He was kind of friends with Boris Malenko in Tampa, and so Ron made arrangements with Ole so that I could go up to Atlanta and start working there. And actually, at the same time that I went up there, Fred Ottman, who was also trained by Boris Malenko, went up there. So, but yeah, so Ron Slinker. So once I was released by the Crockett organization, once they took over Ole, Ron had made arrangements. I got booked in San Antonio. At that time, Buck Robley was booking in San Antonio. Now it was called Texas All-Star Wrestling. Prior to that, it was ran by Joe Blanchard. And, it was Southwest Championship Wrestling, which used to air on USA Network until Vince took it over. But yeah, so Texas All-Star Wrestling, and that's how I wound up out there. They, it wasn't a real well-run organization. We didn't run them maybe 3-4 days a week. And, a lot of green guys, a lot of guys, they were just looking for an opportunity. So when I first got there, they actually, before Nick Kanitsky, I had another partner, Frankie the Thumper Lancaster.
Lancaster.
Right. So he was my first tag team partner. and didn't stay very long. He got a job with Bill Watts in Louisiana, so he took off. He left. In the meantime, Nick Kaniski had showed up in San Antonio, and so they put us together. And unfortunately, I mean, I was green, but Nick was beyond. It just, I mean, at that time, it really didn't work out too well. He just wasn't ready for something like that. And so they were trying to figure out what to do. And in the meantime, Shawn Michaels had just started his wrestling career, and he's originally from San Antonio, but he was in Kansas City, and then I think he went on and worked for Watts some. Again, just putting people over, and so Shawn was actually decided to come back home. So he came back to San Antonio, and since the thing with Nick wasn't really working out too well, they decided to put us together. And of course, I'm not a U.S. citizen, but the team was called the American Force.
And yeah, they were saying on that it was also called the American Breed at one time, but no Force, right?
Okay, the American Force, yeah. And so there was a few guys. Chavo Guerrero was there. This guy Al Madrill. A few other guys. Again, it wasn't we didn't draw it that well, but it was a good chance to get involved for me in tag team with somebody that actually really cared about the business and stuff. We would drive together to all the shows and stuff, and we'd wind up talking about what we could do better, what we screwed up and stuff on the way there, on the way back, and so I knew, Shawn was very, very talented, but from the first moment that we, got together as tag team partners, he made it clear that, he wanted to make it as a singles wrestler. And so we worked together for a while, and he wound up, he was trained by Jose Lothario, right? I guess Shawn was. And Jose had made arrangements so that Shawn could go to the AWA. He knew, I guess, Ray Stevens. So Shawn gets booked, and he leaves me in San Antonio, and he goes on to the AWA, thinking he was going to be this, single star. Of course, what happens is there's genetics. So the rockers are born up there, and I am, left in San Antonio. At that point, it really wasn't, doing too well, and I wanted to find another place. And so from there, I went on to Tennessee. I had sent some stuff about Bill Dundee at the time was the booker in Tennessee, sent some pictures there, and I was on my way to Tennessee.
So in the CWA, you had some interesting matches and partnerships. I believe you tagged, correct me if I'm wrong, initially with Jeff Jarrett, and then in Continental was the the historical moment when Bad Company was formed, right, with Mr. Tanaka.
Yep.
How did that pairing come about, and what were your thoughts initially as to the prospects of the team with Pat? Because it just seemed like chemistry, look, and in the ring, you guys were something special.
Yeah, well, we really had no idea that something like that could even happen. So yeah, I worked with Jeff. Jeff had just finished high school, and that was his dad's deal. Was he had to finish high school before he could actually start working, and they brought him in. So yeah, we worked. I think it was an angle with they had a couple of Japanese guys in with Tojo Yamamoto, and so we worked some with those guys. But then, I mean, the one thing about Tennessee that I can say, and we were there for almost 2 years, really was ahead of its time as far as storylines and gimmick type of matches. And I mean, really got a chance to learn a lot. I mean, the money, what money? But yeah, the way that place ran, right? So it was so I lived in Nashville, and every Monday night was Memphis, right? So at Memphis Mid-South Coliseum. Tuesday night was Louisville, Kentucky. Wednesday night was Evansville, Indiana. Then Thursday, Friday, they had like spot shows either up Kentucky way or down back towards Memphis, Arkansas, Mississippi, whatever. And then Saturday morning, you'd have live TV at a studio in Memphis. Saturday night was a live show in Nashville. And Sundays, sometimes off, sometimes again another spot show. So that was the schedule. And we all drove, together. So you drive from Nashville to Memphis. It's 200 miles this way, 200 miles back after the matches are over. The next day, you're driving to Louisville, then to Evansville. So, yeah, a lot of driving. Man, I got in 86, I got a brand new car, right? And in 9 months, I had 86,000 miles.
Holy.
Yeah, but it was a fun place. And so back to, worked some with Jeff. But then Pat he arrived a short time later. He actually started with Crockett in Charlotte. And they sent him out to Tennessee. And he wound up working an angle with Jeff. And, man, it was doing very well. And in the meantime, Jeff's dad, Jerry, took over the booking. And so it got to the point where they turned me heel, and Jeff was tagging with Billy Travis. So we worked with those guys a whole bunch. And, that really helped with just, again, they had all kinds of different matches and just it was live TV, so you had to really learn to, you in front of a mic and you better not screw up or whatever else you were having to do. So it was a very interesting place. It was a lot of fun. And, I looked at it like college education, right? I mean, I wasn't going to make any money there, but I did learn a whole lot.
So after that successful run and the learning experience that you're talking about, you moved on to where I first became aware of your work on national television, and that's the AWA. Two-part question: how did that come about? And in terms of your dealings with Vern Gagne, did you find him to be an easy promoter, or I guess that's a loaded question, but I'll let you answer that part.
Yeah. Right. So I guess, and I kind of skipped through, you had asked me about how Pat and I, so once we worked with Jeff and Billy for a while, we saw that maybe there was something there. Right. And actually, at the time, Paul Heyman was in the territory. We had wanted Paul to be our manager, but that didn't work out. Our initial manager was Downtown Bruno, or as known as Harvey Whippleman. But so they kept us as a tag team while the rest of the time, and was going on almost about 2 years. And it's a place again where you're running the same towns every week. So eventually the people need new faces. So they decided to let us go. And, I didn't really know until a little bit later, but, Pat, because Pat's father was part owner of Florida, Duke Kimuka, right? Part owner of Championship Wrestling and in Florida. And when it's kind of like being part of the family. So it was easier for Pat to get booked. Like I said, he started with Crockett. They brought him in there because of the Duke. And then when we were let go by Jarrett, Pat had got a hold. At that time, Wahoo McDaniel was booking for Vern, and Pat was a referee in Florida. When he was a young kid, so he knew all these guys. So knowing Wahoo, that's how actually we got booked there. He decided to bring us in. We had worked with the Rockers some already a couple of times in Tennessee and stuff. So he thought, that would be a good angle. Of course, it didn't last very long because they left shortly thereafter. But yeah, about Vern. Again, it seems like we were like I said, San Antonio was kind of not doing too well, kind of on its last legs. AWA had already, they lost all the main stars, right? Vince took everybody. Bobby Heenan, Jesse Ventura, Hulk, everybody. So they really didn't have a whole lot of talent. Again, we're, dealing with a lot of green guys looking for an opportunity. And, so for that initial run, we had worked with the Rockers. We had obviously beat them for the AWA tag team titles, but that's only because we just got a chance to work 2 matches. They were leaving. So, we couldn't really develop that fully. Would have been a lot better if they were going to stay, but they didn't. And so then, we had to find opponents. They tried to create some teams. They brought in other teams like, the Guerrero brothers, actually worked with Rock and Roll Express. They had a couple of young guys there that they put together, so AWA wasn't running too many shows. As far as Vern goes, Vern was, in his mind, he was still the star of the show. And he just, it was like, he was running it like the old days. There wasn't really any storylines or any. You're just gonna go out there and beat somebody up, and then but there's really nobody to beat up that meant anything. Why we would get heat? And the funny thing, I remember we were having a meeting with them one time, and he said, "Well, about beating somebody up." And I said, "Well, who are we gonna beat up? There's nobody here." "Oh, you can beat me up." And he goes, "I am the Caesar around here still." Oh, okay.
Yeah. At 60 some odd years old, or however old he was.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was just kind of on its last legs. We didn't run very many shows. I'm sure we're going to get to, when I first got there, they were doing the TV tapings in Las Vegas, right? And so we were going out there once a month, and they would tape 4 weeks worth of TV. So once every month we'd go out there. But actually, that also came to an end, and then we started just doing the same thing, a month worth of TV taping, but it was in in Minnesota.
The St. Paul Civic Center?
No, it was a small town outside. I can't remember now, but anyways, so they started doing that just locally, So yeah, again, it was great the fact that we were the tag team champions. So that gave us some exposure, and also, being on ESPN. There was a while there, right, where AWA wrestling came on every afternoon at like 3:30, 4 o'clock. So a lot of people got to see us. So yeah, that was one of the best things that came out of that. But as far as working there, it got to that point again, where it was almost gonna go out of business.
But before I ask you in more depth about the Showboat tapings and some of, I recently had the pleasure of interviewing Greg Gagne, and he had some insights on that. I know you've teamed with Greg in your career before, but when you were brought in and paired with the young Diamond Dallas Page, and he had the whole shtick, his great mic skills, the diamond dolls, all that package. What was your impressions of working with him at that very early stage of his career?
Well, didn't really. I had no idea where he came from or where they found him, whatever. But apparently, he sent some tapes and stuff, and he was, like you said, great mic skills, which we badly needed because neither one of us had those. So it was good that actually helped for us, for sure. You got to be honest, and when you look at yourself, I could work when it comes to wrestling, but when it came to mic skills, that was sort of my main shortcoming. And Pat was the same. So yeah, that helped a lot. That we were able to get him. And at that point, I have no idea when he first got there if he even thought about becoming a wrestler. But I think possibly after he was coming out there time after time, and he saw what the business was about, I think that maybe sort of gave him the idea that maybe I should try this. I'm not really sure.
In terms of those tapings, that national contract with ESPN was kind of a shot in the arm when the AWA needed it badly, given the talent raids that you spoke of earlier. And Greg said that those tapings at the Showboat were somewhat of a chaotic affair. Was that your experience? Like when you got there, did you know what the plan was, or did it just kind of all come together on the sly sort of thing?
No, I don't know what he saw. I don't know if it's before we came or something, but when I was there, it didn't seem like that they didn't know what was going on. They obviously had the schedule. And it was just because of the way that Vern was. Nothing was really exciting going to happen, but you're just going to have matches. And he still, so when Vince took over all the TV and stuff, he started having some good matches on TV as well as just, job guys putting somebody over. But Vern would not do that. And he still stuck to his, okay, well, you just, go squash somebody. And that really didn't do anything. But no, I don't ever remember it, being like a cluster or something that we didn't know what was going on.
Mm-hmm. A fan here is asking you had many matches with Virgil Soul Train Jones. Thoughts on him passing away and any good memories?
Obviously, we've lost many of the boys, and that's never a good thing. I'm just, I don't know, going to some of the autograph signings in the last year or two, I ran into him and he just did not look healthy, so I'm not sure what exactly was going on with him. I know he wasn't doing well as far as financially. I heard a lot of, where he was living, and he had somebody taking care of him and stuff. So I really feel badly that he had to, go through that. But he was just very fortunate, that he got the deal that he got being Ted DiBiase's bodyguard. I'm sorry, but he just was not a good worker. And I'm not the only. I've watched Ted speak, especially after Virgil passed away, and it was what it was. He had no idea. He had a good physique and stuff, but when it comes to wrestling ability, he just wasn't there.
Mm-hmm. Many fans are asking me to ask you about the name Paul Diamond, and of course there was an original Paul Diamond, and one of the fans is indicating that Ole gave you the Paul Diamond name. I did not know that. Can you talk a little bit more about that aspect of it?
I can, and he is 100% correct. As I said, Ron Flinker got me booked with Ole in Atlanta, and the first time I went to TV in Atlanta, I forgot. It might have who was somebody that was helping with TV, but it might have been like Bill Irwin. I don't know, somebody like, anyways. But they're like going through the dressing room and going, Paul Diamond, and like nobody had said anything to me, right? And he comes up to me, goes, "Are you Paul Diamond?" I said, "I don't know. Did you come from Tampa?" "Yeah." "Okay, I guess you're Paul Diamond." So that's how I found out I was Paul Diamond.
Pretty cool name. Sorry, go ahead.
No. I just that. Yeah, that's how it came about. So absolutely, it came from Ole.
Wow. In terms of your, I know you were talking about earlier that the tag team scene in the AWA, your championship run was kind of like the last sort of gasp. But one of the teams that comes up that I know you worked against and also has had a pretty successful run in the WWF that fans are interested in to this day is the Destruction Crew of Enos and Bloom, and just to know if you had any memories working with them in either company.
Oh yeah, absolutely. To work with them in the WWF, but yeah, sort of at the end of our run in AWA, we had dropped the belts to Brad Rangans and Ken Patera, I believe, and it was an angle to where Pat and Diamond Dallas Page blamed me for us losing the match and stuff. So I had turned babyface, and so that's how I wound up working with Bloom and Enos. And my tag team partner, God bless his soul, was the Trooper, Dale Wilkes. So yeah, no, we had fun. Those guys. Sorry, my dog's going crazy. Both up. Stop. But yeah, so those guys were well trained. They were trained by Brad Rangans, and they were still kind of green. But no, yeah, I thought the Destruction Crew was probably much more fitting gimmick than the Beverly Brothers. But okay, whatever it is. But yeah, we had some good matches, with those guys in the AWA, kind of at the end before I left. Worked an interesting angle with those guys. So yeah, it was fun, and I enjoyed working with them.
Did you correct me if my memory serves me incorrectly, but did you and Del Wilkes not wrestle the Destruction Crew in one of the last, or if not the last, Super Clash?
No, actually, the last Super Clash was Pat, myself, and Medusa against Ricky Rice, John Paul. Ricky Rice, Derek Duke, and Wendy Richter.
Gotcha.
It was a 6-man tag, and at that time we were the champions. Medusa was the women's champion, so whoever got pinned would, if one of us got pinned, we would lose our title, or if Medusa got pinned, she would lose her title. And that's what actually happened is, they dropped the belt to Wendy.
Got a couple of fan questions here and on social media wanting to know if you had any sort of interactions with the Warrior, Ultimate Warrior, Mr. Hellwig.
Very little. Jim was a guy to very much himself. He had a chauffeur that drove him around. Wherever we were in the arena, he always had his own dressing room. So yeah, no, not really. He was just kind of, nobody thought he was like, one of the boys, because he just kept to himself. And again, he would, go to the gym, and his driver would drive him here and then drive him there and bring him to the arena. He'd wrestle, he'd leave, and that was it.
Another fan question here, interesting one here, wanting to know if you ever met Evil Doink, who I'm assuming is Matt Bourne, or Giant Gonzalez.
Never met Giant Gonzalez. Yes, I knew Matt Bourne. Never did work with him, but he was just getting started with the Doink gimmick when I was kind of at the end of my run in WWF.
So after the AWA fizzled out, and you were, one of the cornerstones there as a single, in those dying days, you transitioned to WWF, started off as a single, working house shows, the syndicated TV. How did you get signed there? And was it your initial impression that you were going to be a singles star there, or what was your understanding of your spot?
Well, when I first got there, and actually, I'm not really sure. So after I was done with AWA, it was some time, I'm not saying very long, but possibly, at least like 6 months. In fact, I had thought about retiring from wrestling, because really there just wasn't, much going on. And I didn't have a connection or a way to the WWF. So I went back to school for a little while. I was going to do computer repair. And I did that for, I think, like 6 months. And then out of the blue one day, J.J. Dillon called me and asked what I was doing, and if I'd be interested, coming out there and actually they could have a look at me. And I said, yeah, sure. We hung up. And then like a couple hours later, that same day, he called me back and he said, oh, we have somebody that can't make the show. Can you make it to Oklahoma City tonight? Oh, yeah, sure. So they sent me a ticket, and I wound up going to Oklahoma City that night, worked a house show there. I wound up working with Ronnie Garland. But so that's how it got started. And, as far as what I thought was going to come of it, once I started going to the TV tapings, it looked like to me that this was going to be a spot, perhaps like another Barry Horowitz spot. And not nothing that Barry is a great worker and stuff, but it is what it is. And that's what I thought, because that's, when I first started there, I was on TV and just putting guys over. So, I mean, at least I had a job, but it didn't look like there was much of a future there. I mean, not as far as, accomplishing something great.
So then Pat was there as brought in as the Orient Express with Kiyosato, and right. Then he stepped away to do office work, I understand.
Yep.
And then you were tapped to reform the team.
Right. Yeah.
With the mask.
What actually happened was they, and we were I was on a show in which the Orient Express was supposed to work with the Rockers in Cape Girardeau, Missouri. And at that time, Sato had already left, and they had nobody else to fill in the tag spot. So I'm not sure who told the agent or whatever, but or might have been Sean or Marty or whatever, that we had worked together. So they wound up putting me in that tag match, and Pat and I worked a match against the Rockers, me as Paul Diamond, and we wound up having one of our usual barn burner matches. And I think that probably had a lot to do with the fact that once they saw that, then they thought, okay, well, these guys were team before. Let's put this guy in this spot.
Did you have any contact before with Mr. Fuji? And if not, the fans flooded as they usually do when dealing with someone who has worked with Mr. Fuji. If you had any of those classic ribs either played on you, or were you privy to any of those?
I was privy to some of them. I don't know. Fuji and I got along. He ribbed Pat. He never pulled any ribs on me. But I was, yes, I was privy to. You would know.
Can you think of any off the top of your head that are entertaining, or are they not suitable for broadcast?
Yeah, they're they're suitable for broadcast. This is not actually so. San Antonio, Texas, and it's supposed to be the Orient Express against the Rockers. And I think Pat had injured his knee or something, so he was not in San Antonio. So they decided to put Fuji and myself against the Rockers. And so, okay, fine, right? And boy, I'm glad I was wearing a mask that night. So the match starts, and Fuji wants to start, and he's starting with Jannetty. And, Jannetty, he's going to do ribs too. So, but I didn't know what was going on, right? So they start the match, and Fuji starts just chopping the shit out of Marty and, beating the hell out of him. And Marty's laying down. And you know how Fuji used to do the bow towards the crowd, right? So he goes to the one side of the ring, he bows to the crowd, and they're all booing and stuff. Then he gets Marty up, boom, beats him up some more, knocks him down. Then he goes to the other side to bow. And Jannetty's laying down on the ground, and as Fuji is bowing to the crowd, he reaches up to his tights and pulls his tights down. And, that was pretty funny. But guess what? A piece of toilet paper falls out of his pants. And the people just died. That was the end of having a serious match. And I was like, I'm glad I wear a mask, because Sean and stuff is dying over in the corner. Yeah, I think George Steele was one of the agents. He wasn't very happy with it, but I had no idea that was going to happen.
A lot of the fans, and again, have sent in a lot of questions about your matches in the WWF, and you only had a couple in the AWA with the Midnight Rockers, and they transitioned to the Rockers. Did you notice a difference in their polish and their attitude when you were working them in there? And if you had to pick out a favorite moment of one of those matches with Sean and Marty, what would that be?
You know what? Working with those guys was really, the greatest of pleasures that I could have in this business. I always enjoyed working with them. There was really no difference. The one thing that I enjoyed, and I think, to this day, which was 1992, I think it was, in Miami, the Royal Rumble, I still get fans, coming up and say, hey, I really thought that match was great. And they still bring it up all these years later. So, So, those guys, I don't know, all four of us just kind of clicked. You didn't really have to say much. Everybody kind of knew what was going to happen. And it was a great pleasure to work with those guys.
If there was, if you had to pick between being a single star and tag team, would you have a preference, given the fact that you were really involved in a couple of companies in undoubtedly the greatest period of tag team wrestling that there was, that 80s period into the late 90s. What was your preference to work?
I think just the way that things went, and like I said, and knowing what I know about myself, I would have preferred to have stayed in a tag team situation, and especially in the situation that I was in with Pat. We really got along, and yeah, that probably would have been the best thing that I could have done. Again, as I mentioned earlier. Just because of my, lack of mic skills, I just don't think I would ever got very far as far as singles. And yeah, I mean, not so much even in a tag match. I think unfortunately, we needed a mouthpiece, regardless of what was going on.
Mm-hmm. A fan wanted to ask about you had a number of matches against the Legion of Doom, the Road Warriors, when they attended the company, a lot of house show work. What was your experience working with Hawk and Animal at that interesting point of?
Man, it was great. We knew what our job was there, which was to, make them look like the world killers that they were. And so, we got bounced around like ping pong balls, but we didn't mind. Really wanted to, make them look good. And the office actually, appreciated it, which I was amazed. In fact, we were in Montreal, and Patterson was in Montreal, and we wound up working Legion of Doom, and we put him over. I mean, just like any other match that we do every night, and he loved it. And I, wound up actually getting a bonus on our check the following week. So I knew it was appreciated. Yeah. So I mean, we didn't mind making them look like killers. Botox. Stop.
So a lot of people look back, wrestling historians, if you will, as to your process there. You had a successful run in as part of the Orient Express, and then you ended up inheriting that whole Max Moon character with that heavy costume that we've heard so much about. What I know Conan left the company, and they had invested a lot in the character and the gimmick and everything. But how did you get the call for that? And what was your experience with all that heavy gear and the real cartoonish aspect of that character?
Right. Yeah, you're right. I'm not sure why Conan left when he did. From what I know, the initial gimmick, the initial plan came all from Conan. The whole outfit and everything. It was his deal, and he approached Vince, and obviously they were going to go ahead with this. And so it's kind of a weird story. And actually, I don't know. I don't believe I've ever mentioned it. So. Right. So we're doing the Orient Express, right? And before this Max Moon thing, right? One day at the television taping, Patterson comes up to me and he goes, Paul, you need to grow your hair back out. We're going to do you and Jannetty as the new Rockers. Oh, wow. Really? Okay, cool. So, and I was excited about that. And approximately a week or two later, my favorite person, Marty Jannetty, gets arrested at a bar in Tampa, Florida, after one of the matches. I think he had some cocaine on him, and he got busted. And so that was the end of doing the New Rockers. So then. At that time, so there was Orient Express there was the Bushwhackers, there was the Heart Foundation, Legion of Doom, the Rockers. So we went through all the babyface tag teams, and there was just nobody else for us to work. So they wound up. Pat actually was let go, and I was on the road still working as a singles as Kato. And so there really wasn't anything. I didn't expect anything, but I was just happy to be on the road and still working every night. But yeah, so after that day, I think it was in Hershey, Pennsylvania, at the TV, and Conan just never showed up. And I was, they have, there's three sisters. They're all from Chicago, and they do the costumes for the guys. And we were standing there and talking kind of out loud, and laughing. And then I said, "Man, they made you make this costume like in a matter of days, and now you have nobody to even put in it." I said, "Shit, you make a few alterations. I bet you I could fit in it." And like across from they were at, Vince's office was at the TV taping, and he opens the door and he comes out. He goes, "What are you guys being so loud about? What's going on?" I said, "Oh, nothing. I was just telling them, this is the costume, and if you made a few small changes, I bet you I could fit in it." And he goes, yeah, okay." And so he turns around and he leaves, goes back in his office, slams the door. And we're out there still talking and stuff. And maybe a half hour later, Vince comes back out, and I'm standing there, and he points at me. He goes, "You." And I'm like, "What? What did I do now?" And he goes, No, come here." So I go in his office. He shuts the door. He goes, "I thought about what you said a while back, and you want it, you got it. It's all yours." And he put his hand out, and we shook hands, and that was that.
Wow. Was that a jarring sort of transition for you, because you had primarily done the tags for a while. You're back to doing a singles, but the style of match that you worked as Kato was different than Max Moon in terms of that kind of lucha libre influence. Was that something that they sat you down and said, "Paul, you have to do a different style," or it was just like, go to it?
No, like what Vince said, whatever you want to do, it's yours. So I knew, obviously, I saw what Conan was kind of trying to do, and so I knew it was going to have to be different. And I was fortunate that again, the Malenkos come into play, because Dean and Joe, they were still around Tampa, and I was living in Tampa at the time, and so I went out there, and Dean had actually helped me with some of the fancy moves and stuff that I used as Max Moon. So yeah, it was up to me. Whatever I felt like should be done with it. That's what I did.
Another one of the matches of yours that the fans talk about quite a bit to this day, and I'm sure you have this experience as well, is when you were on the first Monday Night Raw and you wrestled Shawn Michaels for the IC title. Hell of a match. How did that one come together? And when you heard about the Monday Night Raw concept, did you have any idea that it was going to turn into the phenomenon that it has?
Oh no, absolutely not. And I didn't, and it was. This is, obviously it's the first one. It's at that point their idea was that they were going to do this taping at that same place in New York City. This was not going to be what it is today. We're going to go to a different arena every week. So yeah, I had no idea what was going to come of it, but they needed somebody to work with Shawn that night, and it's weird because now, like you said, it always gets brought up. Oh yeah, that was the very first Monday Night Raw, and yeah, it was, which is kind of cool to have been on there. And now it's been 25 years. It's crazy. More, right?
So your your run there came to an end, and then you reformed Bad Company in the Eastern Championship Wrestling and had some great bouts against Public Enemy. So two-part question is, how did you get involved in that company, and do you have any particular memories that stand out of those matches and working in that famous ECW arena in South Philadelphia?
So because, as I mentioned, when we were in Tennessee, Paul Heyman was there, and he was just kind of getting started with his career. But we kind of kept in touch. And, so when ECW started, which was in '93, and I think Paul was trying to have Jimmy Crockett involved or something. But regardless, that's, we knew each other, and he could use some talent. And so that's how it came about getting booked there. But yeah, no, that arena, I mean, it's a crazy place. And it just, obviously, it started with the name Eastern Championship Wrestling, right? But then once they realized what they had, and those people just loved the blood and guts and stuff that was going on, it became extreme, very extreme in that matter. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, that just it's a different kind of place to work. Yeah, it just, man, you just can't have a normal match there because they will hate it. They wanted, blood and guts.
In one of the fans on social media asked quite a deep cut about one of the matches where you teamed, the one and only time that you teamed with the original Sheik against Taz and Kevin Sullivan. Do you remember that one?
The Sheik. And this was in ECW?
Yeah, Eastern Championship Wrestling, according to the original Sheik.
Oh God, no, I don't. It could be, and I talked to my wife the other day. I don't remember everything that's happened in my career, but it may very well have been. I have no clue. I don't ever remember ever meeting the original Sheik, but who knows?
Well, there you go. One of the live viewers here is asking about you had a run in IWA Puerto Rico. If you had any of those wild Puerto Rico wrestling stories with those fans that we hear so much about.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. You just have to. I'd hate to be a heel there. I mean, they throw cups that are filled with ice, or they throw batteries or anything they can get their hands on. It's really crazy. I mean, you got when you're coming to the arena and stuff, you got security that have guns on them and stuff, and a lot of guys, went out there and they stayed out there for months. It was a territory at the time. I don't know that I ever would have had. I don't think I would have ever done that. Just with the little experience that being there, working a few times, man, it was just crazy. No.
An interesting portion of your career was when you signed with WCW in '94 and did some singles work to start off with, working those center stage tapings in Atlanta against I've got Steve Austin, Arn Anderson, Steamboat, Flying Brian, like a who's who. How did you come to sign with WCW, and were you expecting to get? Because I know you did a few matches with Pat again as not Bad Company, but in a tag team situation. Were you expecting a bigger sort of spot, because it kind of ended rather quickly?
Yeah, I never was signed with WCW. So Eric Bischoff was in charge there at the time. I never really quite understood why I never got signed there. There was so many guys there that had jobs and really couldn't even compare. But that's Eric Bischoff, and I knew Eric Bischoff when I was in the AWA. Eric Bischoff was the guy that was operating the camera when we were doing interviews. And I'm not going to say how he got where he got to. I know how, because, when WCW, so Greg Gagne went to WCW and worked there as one of the bookers, as did Bill Dundee and stuff. So I'm sure Greg Gagne brought Bischoff over there. But Bischoff sure moved up the ladder, and it's just crazy. I had fun working with those guys because they were all good workers, like you said, Steve Austin and Steamboat and Arn Anderson. But the funny thing is, I worked with Johnny B. Bad, right, and we had a heck of a match. And here, like Bischoff, this is the kind of how much he really didn't know about the business. I see him and he's talking to Johnny B. Bad over there and telling him, "Oh man, yeah, you really picked it up, and you had a great match and you're really moving up." Well, I'm sorry, but I don't think he would have had such a great match if I wasn't in the ring with him. So, but that's the way he was, and I guess that's what he saw, and that's why he didn't, offer me a chance to stay there.
Did Bischoff not see anything in the reformed team with Pat, or?
Apparently not. Apparently not.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Strange. So after that experience, you returned to ECW, and it was a different landscape at that time. You had some tremendous matches against Bigelow, Spike Dudley, and RVD.
Yeah.
But particularly, you seem to have really good chemistry, and actually had a program with Al Snow.
Yeah.
Do you that whole situation there, were you under the impression that was going to be a longer deal, or what were the parameters when you came back to ECW there?
Oh, no. I mean, again, I had, so after, being done with WCW and stuff, and I had a deal in Japan for a couple of years with New Japan. So I went to Japan three times a year, but what happened to me there was 2 times in a row I got hurt. One, I had a match with Jushin Liger, and I broke my foot. And this was kind of like 2 weeks into a 4-week tour, and they're great, man. They give you all your money, but and then they sent me home. Of course, I wasn't going to do anything with the broken foot. And then they brought me again a few months later, and somebody went to power slam me, and they really whipped around real quick, and I wound up tearing my groin. And this was probably even earlier into that tour. And again, they gave me all the money and everything, sent me home, but they just didn't see how this was going to work out any further, because twice, unfortunately, I got hurt, and so that would have really been a good thing, just going there like 2-3 times a year for a month at a time, and the money obviously there is really good and stuff, but it's a different kind of work for sure. And just unfortunately, I had a couple of bad injuries.
One of I know you touched on it earlier in terms of that interaction about Max Moon, but one of the fans on social media sent a question asking about your dealings with Mr. McMahon during your time in the Federation, and do you have any thoughts on the WWE without McMahon involved?
You know, I didn't really deal with Vince that much. Just again, not being one of the main guys. I mean, my main objective was to, keep a job and keep working on a nightly basis. So it was not that often that I talked to Vince. The one time about the Max Moon thing and stuff. So, but I don't know. Just because I didn't deal with them that much, I really have no idea of all the stuff that obviously has come out here recently. I had no clue that Vince McMahon was that kind of person. So, I mean, and again, just because also I wasn't so involved, I didn't know how much actual input he had, or who else had input and stuff, or was it just, well, I'm sure it was, when Vince said it's going to be like this, it's going to be like this. But obviously, he's gone now, and I've watched a little bit, and seems to be doing pretty well.
You came from a time in the industry when things were radically different, and a lot of old school fans will say better, notwithstanding the fact that they're WWE anyway, not AEW, but WWE is making such huge profits no matter what type of product it seems that they put out there. A lot of talking, low on the in-ring action. What are your thoughts on the business today, and not talking the indies, but the two main companies? Do you share that kind of point of view that it's not so much pro wrestling anymore than a television product, or what are your thoughts on that?
No, yeah, I do agree. I mean, I can't tell you when the last time I've seen AEW was. When they first started the company, I watched a little bit, and it seems like it's all gone downhill in a handbasket, man. I'm not really sure what's going on there, so I'm not even going to mention them. But yeah, as far as WWE, just to watch the matches, and it's wow. I mean, when I was in business and working and stuff, we talked about psychology, of a match and telling a story and stuff. And man, this is none of that. They just come out and 20 different clotheslines, 3 flips with a double twist, and it's beyond me. So yeah, I mean, none of that means anything. Obviously, you just got to be a decent athlete and stuff, and to try and get by. But yeah, there's no stories, or nobody's selling anything. None of it means anything. I mean, not when somebody DDTs you a bunch of times and stuff, and then you get up and run to the ropes and drop kick them. I mean, come on. So it's very different. I am so glad that I was in the business at the time that I was, just because there was still guys that I respected, that I learned from. One of my favorite guys, like Nick Bockwinkel. I mean, there was a guy, man, that he just, everything he did, meant something. And I mean, same with like Jerry Lawler. That's two of my favorite guys. Jerry Lawler, man, he's not some kind of a athlete that's going to be flipping around and stuff. But the psychology, his mind is amazing. And I watched him obviously when I was in Memphis. His main event, he'd always find a way to make it mean something and make it great without having to do 20 different flips and doing all this stupid stuff. So it's and then like Jake and Ted DiBiase, and of course Flair, all those guys, man. That's what the business was about back then. So now it's just not my cup of tea. Let's just put it that way.
We're rapidly running out of time, but I got time for two more questions. One fan question that he's asked a couple of times. This is kind of a deep cut. Did you ever get to befriend Nikolai Volkov on account of your shared cultural heritage? That's pretty cool. I bet you don't get that one much.
I don't, but yes, absolutely. Nikolai was still on the road when I got started, and we'd split some rooms and stuff on the road. And of course, the fans don't know, he is also Croatian, so we could speak in our native language when we'd be on the road and stuff. He was a really good guy. Yes, absolutely.
So in terms of looking back on your career and everything that you've done and your experiences, if you had to, and I know this can be difficult, but if you had to boil it down to perhaps what you most enjoyed and what you're most proud of, what would those aspects be, sir?
Well, I mean, I guess what I'd be most proud of is just the fact that at a time where I was a guy 170 pounds, the soccer career at an end, that I managed to work hard enough to put on enough size and to learn another complete different business and accomplish something. Whether it be, so being world tag team champ, that's not, but just, getting into business and doing some stuff that I hear to this day, whether it was 30 years later, and people appreciating that, hey, we enjoyed what you did, and we love this match or we love that match. So that's what I'm most proud of, that I actually entertained those people and they appreciated what I did.
Yeah, and here we are talking about it all those years later. So you must have done something right. Tom, where can the fans keep up with anything that you have going on? Are you still doing appearances, that sort of thing? And where can you be found if you have a social media presence, that sort of thing?
Yeah, I'm on Facebook, just my real name, Tom Boric. And on Instagram, I'm just not much of a social media guy. My wife says, what? Paul? Okay, on Instagram, Paul Diamond 11. But again, I'm not that much of a social media guy. But yeah, I do some appearances and stuff. In fact, I'm going to be in Charlotte this next weekend at the Gathering. So yeah, I'll be there, but it's 2 or 3, events a year, something that, that's about it.
Well, I want to thank you for coming on the Great North Wrestling podcast tonight. It's been a pleasure, and one of the interviews that, given my fan of your work, I've been looking forward to quite a bit. So again, if fans want to check you out, look you up on Facebook, and they'll hopefully be a robust turnout at the Gathering. And thanks once again, Tom, for coming on tonight.
Thank you so much. My pleasure. It was great to speak to you and all the rest of the fans.
Well, I appreciate Tom's time again. And fans, that's it for this edition of the Great North Wrestling Podcast. Make sure that if you haven't already, subscribe to thehannibaltv.com for great interviews like this. We've got interviews coming up with Greg the Hammer Valentine and Kimberly Page, the original Nitro Girl, and so much more. So until then, folks, thanks for tuning in. I'm Jack Kilby, and take care.